Yes, I made exactly the film that I wanted to make. Different people have different experiences with studios. So I've made an independent film. I have now made a studio film. I was very
Exactly.
lucky. I was super lucky. My independent film was my first film. It was such a pleasure to make. You feel like you're in the weeds every day trying to figure it out. This
Right.
film was amazing because Universal and Universal Content Group had I had such support, and they were I said this at Tribeca, but they were incredibly brave because they didn't fully kept talking about these 3 other storylines, or I didn't even know if it would be 3. I kept talking and they kept being, "We don't really understand what you're doing, but, okay." And so having that kind of support and having people, like Helen Parker, my producer, John Batic, having people who really believe in you is extraordinary. Now, the flip side to that is you get notes.
Good day, Ebs Burnough of the film KEROUAC'S Road, The Beat of a Nation. Ebs, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fantastic, even better after seeing the film. So it hits theaters on August 1st, and I was blown away. It's one of my favorite films of the year. When you start watching a documentary nowadays, don't you start to think, what are they going to do to make it stand out? Is it going to be a hybrid documentary? Are they going to make Jack Kerouac talk through AI? I don't know what to expect. And so this sort of like the way I thought of it was a traditional documentary, but with a twist. So did you go into it thinking I'm going to have to make it stand out through the medium of how I tell the story, or did the way that you told the story through anecdotes of people traveling just come naturally to you?
Terrific question, and thank you. It was very much for me, I felt strongly that I think the book is very relevant still today, but increasingly, younger people aren't reading it. I read it for the first time when I was 16, and
Right.
I thought it was brilliant, and there were beautiful parts to it, but I, at the time, as a 16-year-old Black, gay, though not out yet, kid in Northern Florida, didn't really feel the same ability to go on the road in that same way, and so for me, part of it was opening up access to that road, and we're all on our own individual paths, which is a big part of
Right.
but for me, it was very much saying, "Gosh, wouldn't it be interesting to also talk to people who couldn't have gone on the road like Jack did in 1957, but can today?" And so
Oh,
that was very much a something that I wanted to it wasn't about and again, I think it's important, it wasn't about taking the road away from anyone, but really it was
right.
about expanding it, and that was what led me that's why I thought that was the only way that I could tell that story.
And it's done so well. I didn't even think about the connection of just people who wouldn't traditionally be able to make that road trip, but that's so fascinating. So your story is incredible as well. And you're the chair of the Sundance Institute. You work at the White House. What kind of advice can you walk me through how you got started in filmmaking, and then what kind of advice you would give somebody to start? Is it something that's repeatable in some way? Do you feel your story is so sui generis and it's like there's no way to like all those million to one odds of all this stuff coming together into a career like that?
That's fun. I actually think I'm a big believer, and it ties back perhaps to the book. I'm a big believer that, like, do what you wanna do. I studied theater at Northwestern. I was an actor for a bit. I worked as a publicist. I did 1,001 things, and I worked on tons of campaigns and all over the country, and then on the Obama campaign, and then at the White House. And when that was done, I went and worked in cosmetics, building a cosmetics company for Estee Lauder. And then I
Wow.
always had a passion for theater and film, and I was lucky enough to grow up around a lot of great creators and direct and composers. But yeah, then it was just kind of I was like, all right, it's time to turn a corner and do something new. And so I did my first documentary in 2019, which was called The Capote Tapes. And I learned a lot of just making that film. But no, my short answer is I have 4 kids. My youngest is 5, but I also have a 24-year-old as my youngest older kid.
Oh wow.
And
Great.
so yeah, I've got 34, 32, 24, 5. But I say, you know what? Just do it. I think the one lesson that I've learned about film was that it all seemed such a club. It all seemed so far away from being accessible, and I think
Right.
the reality is once you just start doing, you find your people, and that also makes everything so much better. So I think just start doing. That's my big get your pho I keep telling people as I'm promoting this film, "Put your phone down and look out of the window, but if you wanna become a filmmaker, pick up your phone and start shooting."
And so is it just it sounds like from the one thread through all that is just live life. You can't be a great documentary filmmaker unless you have life experiences, whether it's like starting in cosmetics, working in politics. Maybe your candidate won't become president, but at least you'll learn something. So is that sort of the one
Yeah,
thread of like
I
you
think
can't
it's
do it without learning?
being curious.
Yeah.
So all those years that I worked on campaigns before I was on the '08 Obama campaign, I lived in Iowa, I lived in South Carolina, I lived in Michigan. I had one bag and I would pick it up and I would travel wherever the next campaign was. And so it was about commitment. I believed in the work, but it was also about being curious and being willing to take some risks. Nothing's guaranteed, but if you don't try, you can't fail. But if you can't fail, you can't succeed.
So what did you take away? So this is your second documentary. What did you take away after Pody Tapes to this documentary when you started the process? Were there things you're like, okay, I'm going to make sure to do this differently for this film?
No, I think I knew I wanted to bring On the Road into the 21st century. I knew that the book still rang true and relevant with all its flaws. It was very relevant for today, and I think it still has so much to offer, and so I knew I wanted to bring that in. Along the way, early on, I with my producing partner, Eliza, I really came up with the concept of wanting to follow, these kind of outsider storylines, and so that was it. But you think what I again, a learning was that I didn't fully know what the film was gonna really be about until I got deep into it. You know what I mean? You can't I don't
Yeah,
think I can't s storyboard everything out to death because I was also dealing with 3 live storylines, and I had no idea what
it's going to
with
happen.
Diana, who's 69, traveling the country with her dog, going to see her 91-year-old father, who she's only seen 3 times in 50 years. I was with her. We had no idea whether or not when she got there, was he gonna open the door. We didn't. There are those
Right.
moments that are real life that you have to be open. Gosh, Tino and Tanaj, another storyline in the film, there were plenty of times when the van broke down. You just don't know what you're gonna you
Yeah,
don't know
right.
what you're gonna
Exactly.
get. So I approached this knowing the broad story that I wanted to tell, which is a story of self-discovery, which is a story of being on your own individual road and what it means to bump up against other people. But I had to let it figure out. I didn't know where it was gonna go.
And it just turned into just such an incredible film. I don't think there's anyone who can understand independent filmmakers as well as studio filmmakers more than you. So when you made this film, was it as a studio film, was there any is it what kind of differences would you say occurred that you wouldn't have had as an independent film? And were you able to make exactly the type of film that you wanted to make?
Yes, I made exactly the film that I wanted to make. Different people have different experiences with studios. So I've made an independent film. I have now made a studio film. I was very
Exactly.
lucky. I was super lucky. My independent film was my first film. It was such a pleasure to make. You feel like you're in the weeds every day trying to figure it out. This
Right.
film was amazing because Universal and Universal Content Group I had such support and they were I said this at Tribeca, but they were incredibly brave because they didn't fully kept talking about these 3 other storylines, or I didn't even know if it would be 3. I kept talking and they kept being, "We don't really understand what you're doing, but, okay." And so having that kind of support and having people, like Helen Parker, my producer, John Batzik, having people who really believe in you is extraordinary. Now, the flip side to that is you get notes.
Right.
And people you get notes. You get notes, and again, as a person who was a theater actor, notes to me are a wonderful gift because it means I don't take notes as a negative thing. I wanna
Yeah.
understand what's landing, what's not landing. It doesn't mean I'm gonna take every note and incorporate it. It's still gonna be my film at the end of the day, but
Yeah.
I look at that process as really important and I think for me at least, very influence helping think through. If you're still not understanding how this story fits, then let's go back and play in the edit. It's important. So I would say I've had 2 wonderful experiences. This has been a terrific experience, and I've actually loved every minute of it.
Would you say that's one of the biggest challenges facing independent filmmakers is they can't take notes or advice? I talked with Amani Davis, who runs the Proof Film Festival, and she said they offer feedback and hardly any directors take it. And so is that what you run across is like directors are so wedded to their vision, they won't allow anybody to give them advice or thoughts on how
That's
to make their
interesting.
film?
I certainly obviously, it always depends on the person. I do think there's a philosophy amongst some directors, just like amongst some composers, where this is my vision and I'm not deviating from this. I'm a little bit more I won't deviate from my vision, but if I can get help to help make my vision clearer to more people, because sometimes your vision is super clear to you and
Yeah.
you show it to 10 other people and they're like, I don't get your vision. And so I think that's a really important thing that we all, certainly for me, that's an important process. I think the thing that's really facing filmmakers, both documentary, which I care deeply about, obviously, but also filmmakers across the board, is just we have an industry that is in flux and we have an industry that is on the brink of change every day. And we don't know where it's gonna land. And so people are and studios, and that's why I will say again, I've had such a wonderful time and been very lucky working with Universal because often people aren't willing to take risks. And
Right.
if you're not willing to take risks, you're probably not gonna find a new filmmaker that's doing something different, or you're not gonna be able to say, "All right, we're gonna give this guy who's talking about these 3 verite stories included in this documentary on Jack Kerouac and the book On the Road." You're like, "Hmm, I think I might, like, take a bet over here instead of there."
Yeah,
And
right.
so I think a changing industry and a lack of bravery are the
Yeah.
biggest things that we're facing.
Love that. So, Ebes, the music is also incredible, and I feel like there was a million ways to that you could have made missteps there. Maybe you had period pieces. There could have been way different directions you went with. I think Brian Katz was your executive music producer. Can you talk me through, like, how the music was selected and you put that for the film?
The music was one of the most important things for me,
Yeah,
and I didn't want the music to be expected. So, it
right.
was very important for me to make the music align with a contemporary story that was also about these
Exactly.
3 storylines, and so John Forte, who composed and did the score, and John
Okay.
and Brian worked together, but John was, a part of the Fugees and has, like, a totally different vibe, and we had met through friends a few years ago, and when I started on this project, I said to my producing partner, Eliza and John, I said, "I have the person, it's this guy, John Forte." And everyone was, "He's never scored a full picture before." And again, it goes back, and again, team at Universal were like, Okay, seems it's we are you sure?" And I was like, "This is the guy." And he did an
Oh,
incredible job, and then we were super lucky, I'll tell you, we were incredibly lucky because Natalie Merchant agreed to be interviewed for the film, and I'm a big fan of hers, and then later on, I sent her a cut of the film, and I said, "Just want you to watch this." And then she came back to me, and she said, "I wrote a song. I was inspired by the movie, and I wrote a song." So the closing song
wow.
in The Land is an original written by Natalie for the film, and inspired by the film and the book, and of course, she had previously written Hey, Jack Kerouac, so and it wasn't commissioned, it was literally just a kind of purely from her action to the film. So John and Natalie, the music I think the music is just beyond. It is exactly what I wanted it to be.
And
And
it's
it's
so
something I also
unexpected.
think it's something you can actually, go for a run or go for a walk or go for a hike and listen to that entire score because they've just done John and Natalie, they've just done a great job. I'm so thankful. Beyond.
1,000 1,000%. So the film comes out in theaters August 1st.
Yes.
How are we doing on documentaries in theaters? What are your thoughts on growing that audience? Are there systemic issues that we can fix? If you go and ask a guy on the street, what were the Oscar nominees for documentary last year? There's no way they would know. The winner this year isn't even streaming or event. So what can we do as your film hits theaters to get audiences at theaters for documentary?
I think the key things are, 1, talk about it, put it out on social media, tell your friends.
Yeah,
2, buy a ticket. People forget what a fun thing it is to go to the movies. Going to the
right.
movies is a good time. Like, get a
Yeah,
group of friends, take a date, take your mother, take your father. It's a it's and this goes back to the point of the film actually, which is we're all on our own individual roads, but we
yeah,
bump into one another. Like, we it building community is part of what makes film and theater, part of what makes the arts magical. And so I say for those in New York and those in LA, because that's where it'll come out first on August 1st, and then it'll roll out across the country over the coming weeks. But put it on Insta or
yeah,
do a TikTok and do it at the movie theater. Buy a ticket, please.
yeah,
That's the only
yeah,
way that and then my larger not specific about this film, but my larger belief system is that I have a five-year-old, as I said earlier, we go to the movies all the time, and I think we have to reintroduce the concept of going to the movies to
yeah,
our kids, because there's
right,
a whole group where going to the movies, in part because of COVID, in part because of streaming, in part because of bigger televisions at home, that
right,
going out for that experience has diminished. And I think one of the
yeah,
key things that we have to commit to if we believe in it and we want to keep that magic going is we have to take kids to the movies so
yeah,
it becomes something that
1,000%.
they want to do.
Yeah. Do you think the festival system is still working well for film? So you had your premiere at Tribeca, a couple months later, you're in theaters, but that's not always the case for films. You
Yep.
can look at Tribeca, Sundance, you have films that are premiering, still stuck in distribution hell years later. Do you feel like the system is letting down some filmmakers the way that our distribution works, that they're not getting their films are not be able to be seen by actual audiences?
Again, I think that goes back to what we spoke about earlier in the sense of bravery on the part of distributors. Because
Yeah,
what we know is, and what festivals do brilliantly is, and that includes for all of them, what they
right.
do brilliantly is curate exceptional content and it's storytellers. And we do that certainly at Sundance. It's in part with our lab programs because we're constantly looking for incredible storytellers and nurturing them in director's lab, screenwriter's lab, and going through that process. So I actually think where the festival system does have it right is that you're still finding exquisite stories made
Yep.
beautifully by brilliant storytellers. I think where I am constantly in conversation and begging
Mm.
our partners in the industry is to be brave, is to acknowledge that what you think may be commercial might actually not be. And sometimes plenty of times, there are amazing stories that people are dying to see, same with books, dying to read.
Yep.
And so I think, more about bravery. I would like to see an overall industry that is just a little more brave.
And props to Universal because it is a brave film. So, do you have other projects in the works right now that I know obviously you're gonna be doing media for this film, but are there projects that people can look for in the next few
Yes, we
years
got a
from you?
few coming. I can't talk about them, unfortunately,
Okay.
but
I had
I've
to
got
ask.
I've got a few that are we've just gotten into production on one and we're
Okay.
free on another. A mix, by the way, of documentary as well as feature film and episodic. So there's some good stuff bubbling.
That's what I was gonna ask. So, do you ever envision working narrative? You certainly excited about doing both?
I think the thrill again, and I would also love to direct a play.
Yeah.
I love storytelling, and so for me, like when you asked the question earlier about getting started and things, I think at a certain point you just gotta if you feel a passion, you just gotta do it and take some risks. Everything's not gonna always, be perfect, but
Yeah.
hopefully You learn from it. Yes, I am trying to tell a bunch of stories and listening constantly to a lot of different people and reading to also find stories that need to be excavated and told.
Yeah. Love that. So, curveball here, Ebs, indie film podcast. One of the things I love doing is hyping other people's projects, asking people who is out there that they think more people should know about. So, obviously, part of your answer is Sundance Labs, which is fantastic. There's so many, I find so many great indie filmmakers through the lab. It's just such an incredible program. But if you had to narrow it down to one, not saying that you're insulting anyone else, but if you had to narrow it down to one, is there a film or filmmaker out there that you wish more people knew about, watched, etcetera?
Actually, and this might be a little bit cheating, but I feel strongly about it. But W.
Love
Kamau
it.
Bell, who is actually
Ah,
in this film, I actually think more people need to be he's an amazing filmmaker. He's a terrific comedian. He's a storyteller, and he's a person that has conviction, and that's a person who I think way more people should be following and watching out for him because everything he does is just super smart. And I think and it's funny and it's current, and I think it's hard to combine all of that stuff and still make people wanna watch and listen. So I think
and
he's a person to watch.
he pushes the envelope, right? He doesn't just make normal stuff, but he doesn't do it in a way that's just trying to gin up social media clickbait type stuff.
No, he is honest and straightforward and funny and smart and know where you stand, and I think the world of him. So that if I had to do one, that would be my one.
Awesome. Ebs Burnough, the film is KEROUAC'S Road, The Beat of a Nation, releasing on August 1st. I'm cheering for your success. Thanks for all you do for independent filmmakers. Keep making tremendous art.
No, thank you. Thanks.